Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So I have the XRP chart open, and in this video, I want to compare what XRP is doing to some historical setups that it has done in the past. I also want to compare the two different options that I laid out in my previous video. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so here is a picture most of you are familiar with, at least those of you who are subscribed to this channel. For those of you who are not, this is the repetitive macro structure that XRP has. So XRP has its bull runs. We see the one here, we see one here, and if we scoot this over, we see another one over here. If you go further back, there's more bull runs. It has its declines that come after the bull runs. We see one here, we see one here, we see one here. And if you go further back, there will be more declines that come after bull runs. And lastly, we have a sideways range-bound time that we see in all these places that comes after the decline and before the next bull run. I take this sideways range-bound time and I split it up into three separate fractals. In fractal 1, we have part A that moves up and moves back down, and then part B where it goes flat. We see that took place over here again with part A moving up and moving down and part B going flat. In fractal 2, we have three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. We see it played out over here again, wave A, wave B, and wave C. Wave C was the move up from the ruling and the decline. In fractal 3, essentially, price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then recovers, does a correction right here before moving into the bull run. So that is the essence of the repetitive structure that XRP has. This whole sequence has been repeated over and over again on the XRP chart. However, every time it repeats, it looks different, it looks unique. And the reason for that is while the basic structure repeats, for instance, fractal 1 repeated over here, but the timing, the height, and the depth, those things will remain original to the new iteration of the fractal. So while it copied over this time around, it was smaller than this time, and the more we look at it, the more differences we'll probably notice. It didn't maybe go up as high compared to here. So for those of you who are familiar with my channel, you know I've been talking about the great fakeout, which is this right here where price moves up, it then comes back down, and this is what I am calling the great fakeout. And the reason why I believe there is a good chance that this is going to play out again over here is because out of all the fractal threes, what we are doing over here today resembles this iteration the closest. So we have completed this bounce right here. We have moved up into this wave right here, and I believe we are somewhere around here. So here is that first bounce, it moves up, and then here is that second wave. Now, I have been saying for forever that we are somewhere around here. It's just time is going so slow on the XRP chart, and there are some differences, and I want to talk about what some of those differences are, and I'm also going to show you, along with those differences, some similarities. So you're probably wondering what this is right here, these circled areas, this line, and I have it over here. Well, let's zoom in here and get a better look at this. Okay, so we're zoomed in a bit more. This is fractal 3. However, it really kind of, the setup starts in fractal 2. So the third wave, the C wave right here. So price comes from the peak of that C wave. It then declines and it comes to a bottom. This bottoming out right here is where this trend line begins. From this point, price moves up again, and it does the first bounce. It comes back and touches it again. It then bounces back up into the second wave of this third fractal, and once again, it touches it again, and it's actually multiple touches here. It touches it here, bounces up, touches it again. It kind of goes back and forth above this and below this trend line as it forms a bottom. Once that bottom has been formed, it begins to, at first, slowly move up into what will eventually be the great fakeout. So let's now compare this to what is happening on today's chart. Okay, so here we are on today's chart, and just like in the previous setup, this setup begins in the same way. So it's in fractal 2 in wave C. Price comes down from the peak of wave C. It then finds a bottom, and this is where the trend line begins. It then bounces up off this trend line and eventually comes back to it at the end of this bounce. After it touches this trend line, let's zoom in here a little closer to get a better look. After it touches this trend line, it then bounces back up into the second wave of the third fractal. It comes down and begins touching it multiple times like it did in the previous setup. So XRP has been repeating this same setup. As you can see, it's dipped below this trend line multiple times. It is now above it. Let's jump back and examine that other one. As you can see, as it declines, in the decline, it first kind of starts making contact with this trend line. However, once it gets closer to the bottom and the bottom begins to kind of form, it dips below it multiple times. And if you notice over here in this one, so this one touches it, it bounces off of it several times. However, in today's one, it only touches it once. Let's zoom in over here real quick. But it does do the same low wicks. It just doesn't go all the way down. In fact, this one, it touched 3 times with those low wicks. And in this one, only one of them touched, but it has those other 2 low wicks. And over here, as it declines, it first hits it right here, similar to here, and then once it gets in that bottoming out part, it does it multiple times, like we see over here. So we are now above it. We could continue to sail above and continue to move up. There's also the possibility it can go back down another time. Okay, so I'm back over here. I want to take this fractal right here, this second wave, and copy and paste it onto today's chart so we can get a better feel for what is taking place with the fractal to compare it to. Okay, so here is that fractal, copy and pasted onto today's chart. So price moves up, it then declines right here. The timing on this is a little different for those of you who are new to this. I've done this in my previous videos. So price moves up here, it then declines. This bounce right here, I believe, is this one. However, the timing, height, and depth, since it's original every time, this time it didn't go as low as this one did right here. After this comes this part right here, where in today's chart, price moved up, which is reflected in the fractal right here where it moves up. It then declines. We see that decline here. Then we have this part right here where price moves up. There's this bounce, which is reflected in today's chart. It then comes to a point here where it declines. Well, today's chart really deviated quite a bit. It really dropped. This drop was just extreme. However, there's a reason for this. I believe the reason why it was such an extreme decline is because it was very far away from this trend line right here. So you can see how close this was to this trend line versus how far away it is this time around. So when it declined back to this trend line, it had to fall a very long way, whereas over here, it didn't. That's why it was able to stay level and flat versus this sharp decline. Let's zoom in again. So this decline, I believe, is this right here, and then it moves up again and does this part right here. I believe that that is this part right here. Let me copy this part of the chart right here, this fractal, and paste it over here, and we could see how that matches up. Okay, so this blue fractal here is from this peak all the way down to here. And the difference is with this blue fractal is it's angled further down. It's not as horizontal, it's more vertical, the orientation. As you can see, it has been following it pretty closely. Now, what is it doing over here? So let's zoom in here a bit. So getting above this line, it really moved up quite a bit versus what the fractal suggests. But I believe it's this right here at play. And this is this maybe moving up. So we'll have to let this play out a little and see how things develop. If it is, let's zoom out a little more. We will begin working on this part of the chart, which I thought we were at many moons ago, but as this has played out, this fractal seems to just be getting bigger and bigger, and XRP seems to be moving slower and slower, but I believe we would potentially move into this part of the fractal. Now, as it moves up, it will go into the great fakeout. I don't know how high this will go, nor how low it will decline to, but that's what we would be moving into. So, folks, as of now, the fakeout is still on the table. Nothing really has changed except it's been going very slow. Now I'd like to see how that other option that I pointed out in my last video is shaping up. Okay, so in my previous video, we compared this third range-bound fractal right here to today's chart. Let's zoom in here and get a better look at this. Okay, so here is that third fractal. Price moves up, comes to a peak in part A, then crashes in part B. It pulls back out of that low, does a small little correction here before moving into the bull run. So let's copy and paste this structure onto today's chart. Okay, so here is that fractal. So as you can see, there are similarities. So this right here is this on today's chart. This peak here is represented in the fractal. This decline here in the chart is represented in the fractal. It moves up here. However, this is where it gets a little dicey. So I believe this decline would potentially be all of this. Well, it's hard to stretch this fractal, but anyways, it goes all the way down. And then we would experience something like this potentially, and then it would go into the bull run. I would say this is still a potential possibility, but I think the other one that includes the great fakeout is a more likely possibility than this one right now. So as of now, I'm sticking with the great fakeout as my primary analysis, the option that has greater possibilities of playing out. Well, folks, if you found this video helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice, but if you did enjoy this type of technical analysis and you're not a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. This is original TA. You're not going to find this type of technical analysis anywhere else. All my TA centers around repetitive macro structures. It's my niche. It's the macro structure you can kind of count on. Now, how it plays out, every time it plays out, it's a little unique, it's different, but the overall ideas, they are dependable. You can count on fractal 3 moving up to a peak, then crashing, and then pulling up out of that low, doing that little correction, and then moving into the bull run. Those type of concepts you can count on. The more you zoom in, the harder it is to predict what exactly is going to happen. Anyways, I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.